Good afternoon, everybody. This is Joey DeCesar with the Able Trust. Give us just a few minutes. We're waiting for everybody to log on, and we will get started very soon.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Allison Chase with the Able Trust. I'm happy that all of you are joining us this afternoon. And as I said to somebody earlier today, I think today is the last official day that I can wish you a Happy New Year. So Happy New Year. And we are excited to be starting off our new year with this webinar this afternoon. So just a couple of housekeeping notes before we get started. We are recording today's session and the video will be available to share and view on our website later this week. We're also going to be using the chat function to take questions for our speakers. I promise you that we're going to try to get to all of your questions in our time today, which we will do at the end of each of the presentations. But if we don't get to your question, I promise that we'll follow up with you to get you the answers that you're seeking. So just wanted to have a few minutes to give you all an update of what's happening at the Able Trust and why we're here together today. As many of you know, the Able Trust has been moving through a transition over the past year, and we are launching a new strategic direction that we're calling Inclusive Florida. Many of the organizations that are represented on the webinar this afternoon have been partners with us for years. And we've had the pleasure of supporting your very important work through grant making. Although grant making is something that we will continue to do, we know that we must serve as a bigger role for our state to begin to close the gap of disability workforce participation. So for the past 40 years, since the federal government has been measuring workforce participation of individuals with disability, there has been a persistent gap between those individuals with disabilities who are in the labor force and the general population, and that gap is 40%, and it has not changed over 40 years. So we know the Able Trust, through the leadership of our board of directors, that in order to close that gap, we must shift our focus as a grant maker to a state leader for systemic and policy change. We plan to accomplish this in many ways, the first of which is to understand the full scope of disability employment in Florida through research and data analysis. There is no Florida-specific data about unemployment and employment for people with disabilities, and we intend to change that. We believe that through data, we will have a much clearer understanding about what makes us stronger advocates, funders, and providers. We also want to position ourselves as what we see as the convener and connector between business, employment providers, and educators. And most importantly, working with local organizations and partners like many of you to provide capacity building resources, relationships, and other resources to make you stronger and to fulfill our common mission of employment for people with disabilities. So today is a small snapshot of the types of interactions that we want to have with Florida's provider community. We want to hear from you and to respond to your needs because you have the boots on the ground and are working directly with people with disabilities to get them to work. So our vision as a statewide network includes business leaders, providers like yourselves, educators, and other thought leaders that are all moving in the same direction to give Floridians with disabilities the opportunity for meaningful work. So today is just the beginning of that conversation. What we envision is for the next 6 months to a year, we're going to be coming to your communities to conduct a series of listening sessions. We want to learn the best practices that you all use on a daily basis, but we also want to learn about the challenges, because obviously there are challenges if we continue to have that 40% gap. And we want to make sure that our work is responding to those challenges and helping you all overcome them, as well as businesses who want to include people with disabilities in their workforce. So I'm excited that you've chosen to be here today, and I look forward to even more conversations in your communities. And what I want to encourage you is not to wait from here to hear from us, but to reach out, and we will be there to meet with you. So I'm going to turn my camera on and ask Alan Suskey to do the same, who's going to be our first speaker. Actually, sorry, Alan, I've jumped a little bit ahead.
No problem.
So first of all, Tracy, if you'll advance the slide. We asked you all when you registered for this webinar a couple of questions to make sure that we were bringing you the information that you needed today. So Alan, who I am going to introduce in just a minute, is our legislative consultant, and he is going to help answer some of the questions that you have around your most significant concerns in this legislative session, including issues around workforce development and COVID impact on returning to work. Tracy, you can switch the slides now. Our second speaker, Bill Santos, is going to be talking to us about managing the job development process from an executive level. And some of the things that you all wanted to hear about is access to jobs that fit our customers' interests and skills, and access to employers. And he's certainly going to cover that today. So Alan, now I'm going to turn on my video if you want to do the same thing. There we are. I just had this covered up. Sorry about that. So I am really honored to have Alan Suskey here today. Alan is a managing principal at Shoemaker Advisors, and he's also an 8th generation Floridian, which I find that just completely fascinating. I'm 6th generation, so I don't know that I've ever met anyone with deeper roots than that, but congratulations. He also has a wealth of experience representing businesses, both large and small, private and nonprofit, at the national, state, and local levels. He's an Army veteran, and he shares a passion for our mission, which we see in his work every day. And he really wants to help us to ensure that the state is the best place for all Floridians to live, work, and play. So welcome, Alan. I'm looking forward to getting your update on what's happening in session this year.
Sure. Thank you, Allison. And it's good to be with you all. Good afternoon from finally sunny again, Tallahassee. We are in week 4 of session. I thought first I would talk a little bit about the general posture of the session, take just a couple minutes to do that, and then we can dig into a couple of bills, and then I'm happy to answer any questions. So this year, obviously, we're still dealing with COVID-19 and the situations, the economic situation, and other other things that have come with that here in Florida. So certainly COVID-19 liability, anything related to that is a huge priority this session. That's extending some of the protections and the other things that we passed last year. In addition to that, we're in a redistricting year. You probably all have heard something about that in the news. Every 10 years, the legislature has to redraw their legislative districts to account for people obviously moving in and out and around the state to redo that. So we're in the middle of that now. That's always a very controversial issue because it could certainly tip the balance of power one way or another in Tallahassee. So there's a lot of that going on. And then the budget, which is the only thing that the legislature rather is constitutionally mandated to do every year, is to pass a balanced budget. That's their only job. They can go home without doing anything else. And so we are in the middle of that. The governor has proposed just shy of $100 billion for the state budget this year, focusing on a number of things. As you all know, I believe we have a large infusion of federal money that's come down from the various COVID-19 relief plans, the infrastructure bill that was recently passed. So how that money works is the state legislature, the state of Florida receives that funding, and then the state legislature generally appropriates that as they see appropriate, and the governor obviously can veto or sign those things. So all that money kind of moves in, and the state legislature decides to do what to do with it. So those are the main focuses of the year, and the things that we're really concentrating here on Tallahassee, on top of the 500 or 600 bills that are filed every year for consideration by the two chambers and the various committees. So a few that I thought I would touch on today are first COVID-19 related. The main thing that the legislature has decided they want to do today, or this session rather, is the one you see there at the top of the list by Senator Burgess and Rep. Burton, and that is to extend the liability protections for healthcare providers that they passed last year. You all may remember there was a pretty significant liability bill. There was a lot of concern in the hospitals and nursing homes when it came to liability issues. They put a very short window on that because they obviously weren't, none of us knew. They certainly didn't know what was going to happen, how COVID was going to unfold in future years. So they wanted to kind of, bookend when that liability protection applied. And this is simply an extension because obviously we're still dealing with it. And so as you can see, they're extending it to 2023. There's another bill here by Senator Tadeo and Representative Benjamin that has to do with retaliation for taking a leave of absence. As you can see, that bill has not been heard in either chamber. I think the focus has really been on the healthcare provider bill, and frankly, Representative Benjamin is dealing with some health issues, so I think that has also stalled that in some regard. But those are really the main things in the top one, 7014 and 7021 being the highest priority. Workforce related. As you all know, last year, a major focus of the legislature, and specifically the Speaker of the Florida House, Chris Sprowse, really one of his main priorities was passing a reconfiguration of Florida's workforce system. Career Source and Michelle Dennard and her wonderful team there worked with the legislature to come up with some things. The REACH Act is what they called it, and it set up an office in the governor's office. And kind of redid some of the things that our workforce does with those WIOA dollars. And they're working through that now. I think the main focus for the legislature this year when it comes to workforce is really ensuring that that's rolled out properly and that it's implemented by the various agencies in the right way. With such a large undertaking last year, it's really hard to know what you need to fix within that bill. There may be some little, what I call glitch bill things here or there that they may try and fix, but I really think they want to see how this plays out and see what, if anything, they need to fix or change in future years. So I think from a kind of a big picture that we saw last year, workforce related, this year won't be certainly won't be as big, there won't be as comprehensive a package. You'll see some of these minor things like the minimum wage issue, which is we all know about. There was a constitutional amendment recently, and that is something that the state is fighting with the local governments about, and will continue to do that. The big issue, one of the big issues you've probably all heard about, is the allowing business owners to sue local governments over ordinances that increase their operating expenses. We deal every year with preemption laws here in Tallahassee. They are a constant up here. A number of folks a number of members file those bills on behalf of individuals and businesses who think that local governments are overstepping their authority or in charge of something they shouldn't be in charge of. We've seen it with sunscreen, cruise ships. I mean, you could go through the list. And what I think, the sponsors, especially Senator Hudson in the Senate on SB 620 has said is, we don't want to deal with this every year, these ones and twos. We want to come up with a big picture approach to how we solve the preemption issue. And right or wrong, this is what they've come up with that essentially would allow a business owner who can show, an increased operating expense or essentially a loss in profit due to a local mandate, that that business owner, he or she would be able to sue that local government, to reclaim those funds. And so they're calling it the super preemption, the preemption to end all preemptions. There's all sorts of funny Tallahassee names for it, but that's probably both workforce and not necessarily COVID, but I think COVID laid bare some of the issues that folks were having with local governments. So I think a little bit of a combined issue there. Really a Senate priority. We'll see the Senate move that. Have seen it move it. We'll continue to see it move it very quickly, and then they'll negotiate with the House. There's Senator Gruters and Representative Trabulsi have the it's the Targeted High Wage Production Program. It's essentially the film incentive, the film for the film industry. That is, in my own personal opinion, a wonderful program, something I think the state of Florida is missing out on. It is essentially a tax rebate for large production companies that come into Florida, film movies, and other smaller scale productions, who are able to receive those tax benefits back after they've made an impact in that community. Drives, as you can imagine, those aren't just the film crews that come down. They're also the hotel nights and all the things that any sort of large event that would impact a community. We've lost a lot of that business to Georgia because they have a robust package. We in Florida are, in my opinion, missing out on that. And I think that is something that the legislature, the Senate, seems to be interested in moving, and the House is not as supportive. So I'm not sure that one's got a chance this year to make it across the finish line, but I know those folks are working hard from a workforce perspective to try to get that done. There's some union dues stuff. There's always union dues and public sector employee issues. I think there will be a fairly significant state employee pay raise across the board this year, probably in the 5 to 6% range, somewhere in there, that state employees will see. I think that'll be huge for our state employee workforce, and probably one of the main funding issues that we'll see. Interesting, Senator Burgess and Rep. DeSigley, as you can see at the bottom, 514 and 317 have a bill. Currently, a lot of local governments, have these employment agencies will have these requirements for, bachelor's degree with 2 years of experience, master's degree with, et cetera. This would allow them to substitute certain work experience for those post-secondary education requirements. We really have seen, veterans being a population, other populations that may not have the same opportunities for those post-secondary education requirements to meet those. We have seen issues where they're kind of blocked out of the workforce and aren't able to apply and take these jobs. We've seen, I believe that this is a very important measure. As you can see, it's the Senate hasn't moved it. The House is moving it as a priority. I think at the end, you'll see the two of them come together. And often when you see that where the House has got it on the floor and the Senate hasn't done anything, or vice versa, that usually tells you that it's a priority of one chamber, and the other chamber is negotiating with them on something that's a priority of theirs that they would like to see passed. That's kind of how things tend to work here.
This gets done that way.
Yeah, exactly. A little horse trading, if you will, which is good for the process. So when you see that, it doesn't mean that it's not going to pass. It simply means that it's kind of a part of the negotiation. So,
Alan, on that bill about the work experience for post-secondary education, is that specific to state organizations, or is that, because it says employing agencies? So I was just wondering if that means state agencies.
Yeah, so it could be state. It's essentially state and local governments. Anything that the state legislature has, functional control over those positions. What we've seen, the state government obviously is a huge piece that they're concerned with, but I think even the local governments, giving them some flexibility to allow them to do it as well, is something that they thought was extremely important. Obviously, private providers can do kind of whatever they want, but in those functional areas, allowing some flexibility was something that I think the legislature thought would be a really good idea, and it was being asked for. Frankly, it was being pushed up by those folks looking to fill those positions.
So one other question, and then I know you probably got a million things that you're handling today, especially on a Monday. I know that many of the people that are on the webinar this afternoon are doing legislative advocacy, some of them coming to Tallahassee, but many of them also just in their local districts. So can you talk a little bit, because the legislators are primarily up here during legislative session, what is the most effective way, if anybody here on the call can't come to Tallahassee, to get their message to their legislators?
Yeah, I would tell everybody, it probably doesn't seem like it's effective, but phone calls and emails, honestly, really emails at this point, and just in where we are in life, are extremely effective. If they know that you are a constituent, if you're not a constituent, I would advise you to find someone in your organization or or that your organization impacts that is an actual constituent, those they kind of filter those. If a number pops up and it's not, if you're a member from St. Petersburg and you get a call from someone with a Miami area code, that's going to be noted in, they'll still take your call and write down what you say, but they're going to kind of put it in a separate column than the folks who very well could be in their district. So the old-fashioned phone call and email really does work. I mean, we've been in a number of committees where folks have said, I got, the ratio of calls is 4-to-1 for this amendment or against this amendment. So their offices, at least the good ones, really are tracking this and tracking those numbers. And so if you can't get to Tallahassee, I would still recommend you reaching out and putting that grassroots efforts goes a lot further than you may feel it does just with your one phone call or email.
Great. And we have an earlier session this year because of it's an election year. Mm-hmm. So next year session will be later. Does that mean committee meetings start later? So as far as like timing for getting started thinking about next year and meeting with their legislators in the district, what do you recommend is like the best timing for that?
Yeah, so it'll be a little different this year because of two things. One, the election, but with the election, and I mentioned redistricting earlier, which means that, so every 2 years, obviously everybody in the House runs, so they're on the ballot anyway. Normally, we don't have the entire Senate on the ballot though, because they're staggered terms. This year, because of redistricting, everyone will be on the ballot. So all 40 senators, all the House members, the cabinet, the governor, that doesn't deal with redistricting, it's just time for that. But everyone will be on the ballot. So it'll be a little different this year. I would encourage you, if you're looking at your senators or your House members, if they're not term limited and they're running for re-election, I would say get in this fall. They'll be in election mode, but they'll still be doing, the people's business that they were elected to do in their current office. So if you could get to them in the fall, I would recommend doing that. Again, as long as they're not if they're term limited, they're not going to be there next year. They're probably going to let you know that, but I would do a quick check to see. And if that's not the case, and the reason I say that is, yes, of course they could lose their election, but that's just something we have to deal with. But once the election happens in November, we will have really one committee week in November, late November, for them to kind of seat everybody and to do all the official business. Maybe one in December, but usually in the last few years we haven't had a December committee meeting. And then starting in January, so we'll have the bulk of the committee meetings will be January and February, and then March we will start session and it will go through May. So if you're especially on the appropriations side, if you're looking for a local project, or if you have something very specific on a policy bill, I would say start in the fall, probably late summer, into the fall, and make sure those issues are in front of those members who are coming back. Because again, if you wait till January or even after November, after the elections, they've probably already had 20 meetings and they're starting to decide what they care about. So.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time today. If we have any questions that come up, in the chat, or anybody emails us, we'll forward them to you.
Great.
And of course, you're welcome to stay on as long as you want and listen to our next presenter. But again, I understand super busy time of year and really appreciate your time.
Of course, always happy to help, and it was good to talk to all of you.
All right. Thanks so much, Alan.
Thank you.
And now I'm going to turn it over to Joey D'Souza, who is our Vice President of External Engagement, and he's going to introduce our next speaker.
Good afternoon, everybody. While my video turns on. So today we are privileged to have Bill Santos join us, and Bill is the President of Employment Management Professionals, Oakville. He has been able to join us at an earlier webinar sometime last year as well, to share his expertise with us. But he's an expert in training and strategizing for employment outcomes for people with many types of barriers. He's worked across the US, Canada, and internationally, supporting local VR agencies and providers of employment services of people with disabilities. So Bill, thank you for joining us. And this is going to be, for everybody who's in on the call today, this is going to be an informal kind of conversation back and forth. So again, please, as Bill and I are talking, please drop your questions into the chat and we will get those integrated as best we can into today's webinar. So Bill, can you give us a practical tool that can help those organizations that are not meeting their goals assess where the problem might be?
Well, sure, Joey. And first of all, thank you so much for allowing me to be part of this exciting initiative and the fine work that you guys are doing. And so, yeah, so, I've worked with literally hundreds of organizations. Here's one of the challenges, right? So they know that they've got to hit a certain level of outcomes in terms of job placements. And for many of them, they come to the end of that reporting period and they realize, oh, well, look at that. We didn't hit our numbers. And so like they know they didn't hit them, but okay, but so why didn't we hit? Like why? What happened? So, you go to staff sometimes and staff will say, well, what do you mean? Why didn't we hit them? Do you not know we're in the middle of a global pandemic, or, there's this issue or there's that issue, or there's, sometimes you'll hear where the problem, you'll hear, well, the problem is the job seekers, they really don't want to work. And, and as a leader, you listen to those things. And it's not to say that there isn't some legitimacy to some of those, but really, but you sit back and you go, well, there's still people going to work. There's still people being successful. Like, why are our folks not going? Like, what's happening? And like, how do you address it when you don't even know exactly where it might be? So I came across this very simple kind of tool many years ago. That's almost, I use it like a diagnostic. You can use it for a number of things. I kind of talk about it like a diagnostic tool. Like you asked, like, where do you help you zero in on where the problem might be? And it's described in the acronym KUBA. So K-U-B and A. Okay. And that essentially stands for know, understand, believe, and act. And I'm going to go through these with you guys very quickly, and you'll see that there's sort of a natural progression as we go from know to understand to believe and then to act. And what you do then as a leader is within each one of those four elements, you ask yourself a certain questions, and when you get the answer no, that we say, okay, now we've got a problem here, because it doesn't really make sense to progress down to the next stage, if that makes any sense, without having resolved the issue from the previous stage, right? So let's just start with no, right? So K, right? So, very, very simply, it's this: do the staff know the expectation the organization has placed on them in terms of employment outcomes, in terms of the objectives? And you'll say, well, what are you talking about? Of course, people. Well, interestingly enough, there are many organizations that, while they talk about the importance of, putting persons with disabilities to work, and we need to do this, you find that they never actually establish an expectation for the staff that they know, okay, well, this is what's expected of me, whether that is in targets or outcomes or something as I was working with an organization years ago, and I was doing some training with them. We were coming down to a part where, knowing what their targets were would help them better understand this particular tool I was going to show them, right? So I say to them, well, okay, so would someone share with me your targets? And they go, what do you mean? I go, like your goals. No, I don't understand. Like your objectives. I don't know what you're talking about. Your numbers. I go, no, I don't know. We don't. I said, okay, like at what point, would your boss come to you and go, hey, you're not doing what you're supposed to do? Like, is there a point where that would happen? And they go, no. And so, I don't know if it was it Peter Drucker or Mintzberg, that old line that said, that which gets measured gets done. The point of departure is that we have to establish that as an expectation. Some organizations, what they've done, Joey, even has gone so far as to, even before they hire the individual. So even in the interview process, right, they're sitting there going, we want to make something perfectly clear to you that, excuse me, there is an expectation that you will do this type, that there will be this job placement activity to your work. And we expect that one of our individuals doing with a counselor would have this level of outcomes, so that that expectation is established in those cases when someone actually even before they come to the organization. So that's the first stage. Do they know what is the expectation? Do we talk about it, at our regular meetings? Do we go around and do we say, so Joey, where are you in terms of your targets, right? Is it something that is talked about? Or is it this kind of nebulous kind of, yeah, it would be nice if we got there, but you know what? Like, I don't know what I have to do, and Joey's really good, so I bet you Joey's going to get us there. And like, you know what I'm saying? So really, really concrete and really specific. Do they know what is expected of them? That would be the first point. And if at that very point you go, no, they don't, we don't have those, we don't have targets, we don't have those kinds of defined kind of expectations, that would you wouldn't proceed to the next one. You would say, okay, well, the first thing we need to do now is work on setting those expectations. Okay. If the answer to the question is, well, yeah, the staff know, like they know what is expected of them. They have targets. We place, objectives in their programming, and, there's expectations set. Well, then you would move to the next stage, which is the U, which stands for understand. So if they know what is expected of them, but it's not happening, is it because they don't understand how to do it? So they know, I know what you expect of me. I just have no clue how to do it, right? I don't know how to put that many people to work. I don't know how to influence an employer. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, it totally makes sense.
Yeah, so it's not enough just to say, well, this is what's expected of you, Joey, and you go, great. How do I do it? And so that would be the next, this understand. So do they understand how to do it? Now, in understanding how to do it, when it comes to job placement, like I don't know a whole lot about anything, but a job placement, I kind of know. Okay. And so that's why I just talk about that. But when it comes to job placement, there are only two key areas of intervention that your job placement department can be involved in. You are either developing the competencies of the job seeker, which we call developmental interventions. Okay. So those would be things like you're running, interview techniques programs, pre-employment preparation, resume writing, that kind of stuff. All of those interventions that are directed at the job seeker. So you're either directing intervention at the job seeker, which we call developmental to increase their competencies, or you're influencing the employer's perceptions of the job seeker, which we refer to as marketing. So what do we mean by influencing the employer's perceptions of the job seeker? Well, what we mean is we work with the employer to get the employer to accept the job seeker as the job seeker is, as they are. Why? Well, because some of the characteristics the job seeker possesses are never going to go away, like a disability. So we have to influence the employer's perception that they will accept the candidate with that particular characteristic. So really, those are the only two areas within job placement that you operate in. You either develop the competencies of the job seeker, or you are influencing the perceptions of the employer. That's it. There's no third option. So A, do you understand that? B, do you understand that not every job seeker gets the same dosage of each one of those interventions? You see, like
makes
not
total
every,
sense to me.
Yeah, so not everyone requires the same level of development. Not everyone requires the same level of marketing. So we have another tool that we can show folks to help you sort that. But essentially, for what folks need to understand now is this. So I'm going to I'm going to develop the job seeker's competencies, or I'm going to influence the employer. Now, I'm going to say something that, I'm not a prophet, nor am I the son of a prophet, but I've been around this industry long enough that I would, I'm not a betting person, but I would bet figuratively that a large percentage of the folks on the webinar right now, their organizations will get more bang for their buck. Or let me put it this way. They're going to see more people transition into employment out of their ability to influence the employer rather than their ability to develop the job seeker. Because for most individuals that they're facing, this is my opinion, the issue of why they're not going to work is because of the employer's perception of them. So the employer looks at them, sees a particular external characteristic, and says they're not suitable. You as the agency, well, you can't do anything about that external characteristic. Do you see what I'm saying? If it can be changed, then we change it. But what if it can't be changed? You see what I'm saying? So the only way is we have to influence the employer, right? The only way we can do that then is to cause a shift in perception to happen in the mind of the employer. And again, I don't know how many people talk about this, but like when it comes to that ability to influence the employer's perception, there is one skill that is more important than any other. Okay? And that is your ability to ask insightful questions. So do they know what is expected of them? Yes. Okay. Do they understand how to do it? So do they understand that we're either going to develop the job seeker or we're going to influence the employer? Not everyone requires the same dosage of each one of those interventions. Okay. And when it comes to, because developing the job seeker, we pretty much have a handle on that. We have a relatively sophisticated systems around workshops and training and resume writing and, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I bet you most of the organizations have a very sophisticated program as to how they do that part. But when it comes to the influencing the employer, that's where it begins to, folks begin to get a little hesitant, a little overwhelmed. Influencing the employer, asking questions. There is an adage in sales, Joey, that is my favorite, and it says this. If you ask the right questions and listen carefully to the answers, someone's going to tell you not only what they want to buy, but how to sell it to them.
Like I've read that in a book somewhere. That's
I plagiarized that from someone, right?
Yes.
But that's, you see the point?
Yeah.
So it's the ability to, and again, I put out a statement. I mean, I don't know if it's verifiable, if it can be checked, but I think for the majority of the agencies, they're going to get more bang out of their ability. They're going to see more people go to work because they were able to influence the employer's perception than simply as a result of developing the competencies of the job seeker. I'm not suggesting that developing competencies of the job seeker is not important. But what I'm saying is, for the organizations that are delivering outcomes at an admirable level around the world with persons with disabilities, they have within their organization the capacity to do both of those things. Develop the job seeker and influence the employer. You have to have both of those.
And I feel like influence is something that we do within our individual sphere of influence on a daily basis.
Absolutely right.
Influencing my wife to get these chocolate chip cookies I'd rather have than the carrots at the grocery store or like that. We're all doing that just in our own different kind of ways, maybe not cognitively thinking about that.
You're absolutely right, Joe. And that used to be one of the things when I would go into the training years ago. So I don't see it so much today, but I've been at this for a long time. And I would hear, sometimes an employment counselor say, well, I didn't really come here to learn marketing. Like, I'm not really about marketing. I'm thinking, well, you're influencing like you said, you're influencing every moment of every day, right? You influence the job seeker. You have the job seeker in front of you and you're saying, it would really be helpful for you if you got your GED. Well, what are you trying to do? You're trying to influence that job seeker. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so yeah, you're absolutely right. What we do is we take and we give you a recipe how to do that, because you're probably not going to come across anyone that's going to say to you, well, I don't think we have to influence the employers. I think that guy's full of, garbage. No, they're gonna go, yeah, okay, yes. How do you influence them? Like, how do I do? Well, one of the things is asking the right kinds of questions. That's one of the tools, right? There's another, but that's the most. If you just learned how to do that, ask insightful questions, just that, when you're with the employers, and I don't mean an insightful question being, how many employees do you have? How many locations do you have, right? Then you're going to see results just as a result of incorporating that one skill. So once we move, okay, so do folks not understand how to do it? Okay, then let's work right there. So let's work at that level, okay, before we go to the next level. So we come down to the next level, which is we call believe, right? Right. So do folks believe in a number of things, right? Do they believe in their ability? Right. So now I know what the expectations are. I understand now how to do it. Do I believe I can actually do it? Right. Do I believe that my agency is going to give me the support that, that I need? Do I believe that I'm going to be able to influence employers, that employers are going, right? So, and do I believe, and this one is, but we like I'm a realist, right? So for some folks, the issue is, do I believe that my job seekers are actually employable? Because I'm going to tell you, if you don't believe the job seekers are actually employable, that's going to come through in your attempts to influence the employer. So for some folks, what makes them is that a word? Ineffective, I guess.
Yeah, I think ineffective. Sure.
I'm from Canada. We have a bit of a difference in language here. So what makes them ineffective could simply be that they don't believe in themselves, and they don't believe that their job seekers are actually employable. And our system sometimes contributes to that lack of belief. Because you look around in the pandemic, and I know as far as, at least as an outsider reading, I think Florida is one of the places that's done, economically, well, right? Where we, like Canada, we're in a predicament economically and job wise. And so you look around and you see so many people out of work, and the mindset becomes in the mind of the job placement people starts to have, well, how is my job seeker with this particular disability with maybe a limited work experience, like how are they going to outcompete all these other folks that are out of work? And so we kind of begin to develop the mindset that, well, my folks are only going to go to work really when everybody else has gone to work. Okay, everybody else is gone, right? And so the belief part, we sometimes contribute to that because the systems we incorporate require the job seeker to hit certain thresholds before we deem them suitable to transition to employment. And the ones that don't hit those thresholds, we deem unemployable. And so if the system has deemed them unemployable, how in the world am I going to put them to work?
Yeah.
Like how am I going to do it? The system itself says that they're not employable. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, but what we begin then to see is that really, and we use the term job readiness, and like job readiness is really defined one employer, one opportunity, one time at a time. It's very difficult when you're working with persons with disability. I call folks with non-traditional labor. So right, to have this sort of macro definition of what job readiness is, that unless you've hit these particular thresholds, you're not going to be employable. What I've learned in my experience doing job placement is that there is some influence in that standard also with the employer, and it changes, opportunity by opportunity, employer to employer, time and time. And then, okay, so let's assume, they know what's expected. They understand how they believe, they believe it can be done. The fourth element, the A, is act. So are they actually doing it? Right? Because you're never going to see success if you know what's expected, you understand how to do it, you believe that it's actually doable, but you just never do it. So act becomes the fourth sort of level on this, on this tool. And again, so, are they acting? So we talk about certain ratios to help guide, leadership, to get an idea of how much activity is necessary in order to see the desired outcomes. So what activity level should I be looking at to my staff? Like, how do I know if my staff is acting at, full capacity, full potential, right? So we talk about things like ratios, but, I guess we used to call them Cole's notes. I guess you guys call them something else. But the brief version is this. I want to be at a level of efficiency in my actions where, generally speaking, for every 5 contacts that I make, I secure 1 meeting with an employer. And for every 5 meetings I have with employers, I secure 1 hire or 1 placement, whatever the term you want to use. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if I know the expectation, right, from no is Joey has to make 4 hires. He's got to get 4 hires every month. Okay. So I can take that and I can go, okay, if he's got to get 4 hires at a 5-to-1 ratio, that means he's going to need 20 appointments. So that means in a month, that's about 5 appointments every week, or 1 appointment a day. Do you see what I'm saying? So that gives you a guide now. So I'm your manager, Joey, and I see you week after week there, in front of the computer, and I never see you out of my office meeting with employers. And I say, well, Joey, we got to be, our ratio is saying about 5-to-1. Like, you got to get, well, I don't have time this week. Okay, but that means that next week it's 2 appointments a day.
Yeah.
So
I think part of the issue is like there's, activity, people do activity. I have activity that I do in my job, but that's not necessarily action that relates to the outcomes that I need to do.
You're absolutely right.
Differentiating activity from action. Which
exactly. And that's where you find in a lot of cases the time for the action that has to happen, right? Because you are, so I used to have a staff person, for example, that I would say, I need you out there talking to employers. Well, I'm really busy. Well, busy with what? Well, I have these meetings I have to go to. So I say, okay, I'll go to the meetings for you. I'll take notes. And then when you come back, I'll debrief you. Because that's activity, I guess, using your term. I need action. I need you out there talking to the employers. I'm not going to go talk to the employers for you because that's your job, but I'll sit in the meeting in your place and make notes, or I'll record it, and then I'll debrief you when you come back. Because what gets us, the outcomes are direct. Job placement is one of those activities where outcomes are directly connected to level of activity. There's no silver bullet. There's no secret formula. Like there's, I've heard over the years all kinds of things. Oh, if only we had this website, if only we had. No. Because what we're dealing with in most cases is a erroneous perception on the part of the employer as to persons with disabilities and their suitability for work. So when it comes down to it, for many of the job seekers that your organizations represent, the barrier to them being hired actually resides in the employer's head. It's how the employer perceives them.
Yeah. Which brings me to, a question kind of popped up. So what are some good examples of those right types of questions?
Just like for free like that, you would like something like that? Just like,
Just for free.
Yeah.
Just one.
Yeah, good question. So let me give you a sort of a very typical scenario, right? So, I'm going into the employer. So you're the employer, Joey. I'm the job developer, and I come in and I go, hey, Joey, thanks for taking the time to meet with me. I understand you're hiring an accounting clerk, right? And I go, what are you looking for in an accounting clerk? Right? Typically, that kind of question now causes the employer, in the vast majority of cases, to provide to give me this sort of laundry list of skills or qualifications. So they need to be able to do, I don't know the accounting software, but whatever. This software, that software, 3 years experience, bilingual. And here's what I found. I mean, what you're telling me, like, you're not lying to me. Yeah, I mean, but is that really a must-have list, or is that an ideal list? You see what I'm saying? So at the outset, the employer when I ask them, what are you looking for? They're always going to describe the ideal. Here's the problem. In most ideal lists, it does not include, and by the way, a visual impairment would be ideal. Cerebral palsy, they have cerebral palsy, that would be ideal. Hearing impairment, that never appears in that list. So I'm sitting there and I'm listening to the employer because Bill said, you got to go talk to the employer. Okay, I'm here talking to the employer. But I don't have what the employer is asking for, because I go back to my caseload. I go, I don't have that. I've got folks that I think that could do that job, but they don't have what you said. So here's what insightful questions could be. So one of the very simple things would be, I would go there, right? And rather than asking the question that caused you to describe this ideal accounting clerk, what if I said something like this? Hey, Joey, I understand you're hiring, thanks for taking the time to meet with me. I understand you're hiring an accounting clerk. What does a typical day look like for the accounting clerk here in your firm? See, now you're going to describe to me tasks. Oh, they do general, I don't know the term, general ledger, accounts receivable. You're giving me tasks now. You see what I'm saying? As opposed to giving me lists. Now with those tasks, it becomes easier for me to come back to you now with a viable option. Hey, Joey, I have someone here that has done this or has been trained in this, And now, does that mean that, that's the silver bullet, that's the secret, that's good? No. But it allows me at least to come back with an option to you. Whereas when you gave me that laundry list of ideal, I didn't have anybody. And I'm going to walk out.
So what I'm hearing, and you can correct me on this one, it almost seems beneficial to come into that conversation kind of playing a little dumb. And I don't say like in a bad way, but more, I should say curious.
Yes.
You are generally, I have no idea what our accountant or finance people do. They have Excel spreadsheets. That class was terrible when I was in school. So asking them what, plain dumb, just being curious, because people like themselves or what they know about.
You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. In fact, one of the things, having spent my life doing this, and, one of the things that, when folks come to sell to me, the first thing I look at is how much time do they spend asking me questions versus walking in the door and, I got the solution I got the product for you. I don't need to hear from you, Joey. I got the product. I'm an expert in the product. I know what you need. I mean, how do you know what I need? Every employer is unique. Every employer is different. Every situation is different. We don't know if your firm just got a contract and they're desperate to bring somebody in, or you lost a contract. Do you see what I'm saying? And so this is in my experience. So I think that, like, for a starting point for a leader that's looking and saying, okay, why are we not hitting our outcomes? I mean, I worked with an organization. I won't tell you which one it is because that's not important. But so they call me in one day and they go, here's our problem. We're not hitting our numbers. I said, okay. He said, here's the problem. I went to my in-house job placement people and I said, my picture should come up in a second here again. He said, I went to my in-house job placement people and I said, why aren't we hitting our numbers? And they said, it's very simple. What we do is we keep all the hard cases here for us and we sent to the vendors all the easy cases. That's why we have such a hard time placing them. Okay. And I said, okay. And he said, well, the problem is I went to the vendors because they weren't getting the numbers either. And I said, why aren't you guys getting the numbers? You know what they said to me? I said, what? He said, well, it's very simple, because your agency keeps all the easy ones and sends us all the hard ones.
Wow.
And he says to me, Bill, you know what? I don't know who's telling me the truth. Yeah, that's right. So you're going to run into a problem there. So this is where I used to start. I go, okay, do they know what's expected of them? No? Okay, then we need to sit down and we need to establish some sort of expectations, targets, whatever you want to call those. Okay, they know we've got that. Do they understand how to do it? Does that mean that there's some training, some skills training that needs to take place, right? Do they believe that it's actually doable, right? Can we as an agency provide them with support? Do they believe, like, nothing contributes, I think, to the believability as having some success out there, with employers. It's amazing to me when I train folks and I say, hey, go and try this with an employer. And, a couple of days later, they text me and they go, oh, I went and did it. Holy cow, it actually worked. And it's like, yeah, because for that person, Joey, no one's going to be able to say that doesn't work, because they're going to say, listen, it might not work for you. It worked for me. I saw it in real life.
Yeah.
And then are they actually putting in the effort? Is the volume of activity? For many organizations, it's the volume of activity. I had one organization that I worked with, and I said to them, like, we looked at their numbers and I said, these were counselors that had a dual role. So they were doing employment counseling and job placement. And I said to them, based on your numbers, you're going to need a minimum of 8 hours a week of job placement activity. So 8 hours a week of contacting employers or meeting with employers. Joey, they almost ran me out of town, to the point that I called the head of the agency and said, like, I need to make a living, but I don't need to make a living this bad.
Yeah.
Because what happened? And I said, like, the folks just they went nuts, man. Like, they went crazy on me. And but why? I said, why? Because I said they should have to be doing 8 hours a week of job placement. He goes, 8 hours a week? Isn't that 1 day out of 5? I said, yeah. He goes, wow, man, if they're giving you pushback on 1 day of job placement, how much are they doing now? And I said,
That's the question.
That's the problem. That's the issue.
Well, let me ask you this question. In your ideal situation, your ideal world, you're a hiring manager, you're about to hire a job developer. What type of person are you looking for? Like, what kind of background are you wanting that individual to have?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, to be, and not to sound, cute or something, but I mean, obviously, if they've had some level of success or at least understand like when I say marketing success, I really don't, like, they don't have to be, Fortune 500 company, right? So, if their marketing experience, let me put it this way, has taught them certain things, like, I have to, when I'm with somebody to try to influence them, I have to ask more questions and do less talking. Then if they have acquired that kind of skill, I don't care where it came from. They attended London School of Economics. Excellent. I learned that selling lemonade as a kid in my lemonade stand. I found that if I shut up and let my customer talk, they bought more lemonade. So if they've learned certain things, regardless of where it was, that's of value to me. In absence of that, an openness, a willingness to learn, for me, that would be the number one thing. So we would say in sports, someone that's coachable, right? Someone that's prepared to, to listen and to put in the effort. Folks have said, well, certain personality. Yeah, I mean, if you have someone that's maybe a little bit more, I don't know what the term would be, like gregarious or more of a people person. Yeah, I mean, that all that does is it makes it a little bit easier for them. But like, I am, if you act like if you did an out, like I'm kind of a shy person, but I've learned a certain level set of skills that I apply when it's time. Like, I'm not the guy at the cocktail party that's out there shaking hands with everybody and talking, hey, how's it going? Hey, how's it going? Right. I'm the guy that's like in the corner there, just sort of standing there, almost praying that nobody comes to talk to me. Right. Right. Because that's just the way I am. But now when I have to go out and influence an employer to help someone, then I've learned a set of skills. Do you see what I'm saying? So I think anybody can learn those, provided there is a willingness on their part to learn those skills. But if they have certain character traits, like, they're more outgoing, they're, they like asking questions. They're a problem solver, right? They don't mind being in situations where that might be a little intimidating to them, that all of that does is make it sort of easier.
Gotcha. It sounds like a bartender might be a perfect job developer.
You're probably right.
People solve problems.
Yeah, exactly right. It's the skill set is not that complicated. Like, it's not that difficult. It just, you have to follow the system. Like, you have to believe that when you ask people questions, people are going to tell you, they're going to give you information, and you're going to listen to that information. And I'm going to use that information to understand what your needs are and to be able to respond with something that is in alignment with that.
Yeah, that sounds exactly right on. Another question for you. What kind of prep should somebody be doing as they walk before they go into a meeting with the business?
Wow, good question, man. Good question. So I'm just promoting my program. We have a program, the employer meeting. And so we call it the meeting planner. So I think a couple of things that are critical, that are maybe 3 or 4, okay? Probably the most important thing is to have a clear objective for that meeting. So you need to ask yourself before you get out there and invest that time and the money, like it costs the organization money for me to go and see this employer. So is to establish an objective. So what do I want the employer to do at the end of this meeting? Right? And there's a certain set of actions that are achievable, right? So, I mean, I don't, but okay, have an objective. And make that objective for yourself as tangible, as visible as possible. So what do I want, Joey to do at the end of this meeting? I want Joey to consider my organization as a potential source of employees. I would say, okay, if Joey does that, what's he going to say? What's he going to do? That will be an indication to you that he sees you now as a viable option for employees, right? So it could be, well, Joey says, do you have anybody in mind? And you go, yeah, I'm just thinking about some folks here. I think I do. Maybe we could meet next Wednesday at 3:00 and I could go over some of those individuals with you. And Joey goes, sounds good. I'm in. That would be a very definitive that Joey has bought in, that we are a viable. Doesn't mean he's going to hire, but he considers us a viable. So setting that objective is probably number 1. Okay. Then, so once that is established, in terms of your preparation for the meeting, two things. One is I like to go in with my questions prepared in advance. Why? Because I'm going to spend the bulk of my time asking questions and listening to the answers. Here's what happens. If I have not formulated my questions, then as you're talking to me, I'm not listening, I'm formulating a question. If I'm formulating a question, I'm not listening to your answer. So prepare, we can give you a structure, a sequence of questions to ask. Sounds, oh man, every time I go to an employer, I got to come up with my question. It's pretty much always the same questions.
Now, do you ever deviate? Do you allow yourself to deviate from your list? Or is that, no, we're going to stick on?
No, we did. Yeah. Yeah. So the questions are very, so I always would start with background questions. So if I was interviewing you, Joey,
Mhm.
You were the employer. I would probably start and say, so, hey, Joey, thanks for taking the time to meet with me. And so let me ask you something, Joey. How long have you been with Able Trust? That's normally where I would start. I'd like to get a little bit of background. How long have you been here? You've been here 1 year, you've been here 50 years, right? Oh, wow. Wow. You must have seen a lot of changes in 30 years, right? Oh,
Yeah.
You just recently arrived. Wow. What are some of the exciting things that you've seen here? What brought you here? So that's where I normally start there. You know why? Because for two things. One is I'm going to start the meeting by having you talk about things you're comfortable with and knowledgeable about to help you be at ease, right? So I'm not going to walk in and go, so Joey, chapter line 17 of section 2 of the ADA. Can you quote that to me? Right? So I'm going to start by having you talk about your experience, your business, your marketplace, your competitors, the challenges you guys see. And I'm going to do that for a little bit of time to establish some sort of a rapport with you, a connection with you, right? And I might watch your body language because I'm going to transition now into what I would call my needs questions to get to know what your needs are, right? So I need to get you. What I find is the better I connect with you, the more rapport I establish with you, the more, not truthful, but the more real you are in your answers.
Yeah.
Right. If I just walk in the door and I go, hey, Joey, I understand you're hiring an accounting clerk. What are you looking for? You go, here's a job description. Well, that's useless to me. But if I engage you in some time going, hey, how long have you been here and how's it been? And wow, that's great. Very exciting stuff. And so Joey, like this accounting clerk position, what can you tell me about it? You're going to be more real. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does make sense.
Right? You're going to be more open and go, hey, Bill, here's what I really need. I need somebody that's going to be here every day. You know what I mean? And is going to work hard. I mean, that's, I want to get to those because if I can get to those baseline needs, man, I can rock with those. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So then I do that. And then I might do a little bit of questions around, have you ever worked with an agency like ours? What was that experience like for you? Right. To try.
That's key.
Yeah. Because you see, if you haven't raised any objections or any concerns at this point, I'm going to use that question almost like a catalyst to see if there's any issues there. Right. So you say to me, yeah, we worked at an organization like yours in the past. I go, what was it like? Oh, the experience was horrible. Oh, okay. What happened? Right. Because I need to understand that. Or we worked at an organization like yours in the past. It was wonderful. What made it such a wonderful experience? Because I want to replicate that.
Yeah. Right.
So, and then, so essentially those are the kinds of questions that get within that framework. But here's what happens. And your question was really important about, do you deviate? Here's what happens. When I get you talking, you know what I'm saying? You might take the conversation, I'm there with an intent to establish relationship with you. So I'm going to give you some rope. You want to talk about the Bengals this week, or what? Like, I'm going to give you some rope because I'm trying to establish a relationship with you. Here's the key now. Do I know the skill set then to bring it back to where I need to go? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so I've got my questions formulated. I might give you some rope and some leeway, and you're going to take it. And then and for counselors, they do this all the time, right? There's a term, I don't know if it's a bridge, you bridge back, and I need to bring you back now because in my sequence, I have to ask you now about, what was your previous, have you ever had an experience with an organization like ours? So yeah, listen, I've gone into employer meetings. I've taken staff in with me, like I'm coaching, and we walk in, we say, hey, thanks for taking the time to meet with me. The employer starts talking and they don't stop. Like they just talk the whole time. We don't say boo. And at the end they go, so when would you have somebody for me? We go, we can have somebody here tomorrow. And we walk out the door and the person I'm coaching goes to me, oh, I didn't get to ask any of my questions. And I go, who cares? Who cares?
You got the outcome.
We got the outcome. Absolutely. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right. And so they're, oh, but I didn't get to ask any of the questions. So you know what? And I went with Allison. I don't know if she remembers this. We went to an employer one time. I think it was a newspaper. And we were working together. And I don't know if Allison remembers this, but the employer, we walked into their office and they were like stone-faced, arms crossed, like just, and I'm thinking, oh boy. And we just started, and the person just completely opened up, took us on a tour of the place. And we left there after like 45 minutes. And, you know, she was like our best friend.
Right.
And so you have, but here's what I find. And I'm sorry, man, I'm taking so much. You guys can just tell me to stop at any time you want.
Yeah.
I find it's easier, right? So the employer takes me off course a little bit. It's easier if I've gone in with a sequence or with a plan to come back to that than sitting there and going, wow, Joey's taking me way off course. Where the hell do I go now? Like, how do I bring this back? I'm not worried about it. I know exactly what my next question's got to be.
Yeah.
It just, I might ask it out of order. I just might take a little bit of time to get there, but yeah.
All right. This will be my last question so we can wrap it up.
Yeah.
What level in the organization are you trying to get that meeting with? Someone in HR, someone at the top C-suite?
The decision maker, ideally someone that has the authority to say yes or no on the hiring decision.
Gotcha.
Right. So HR can be a little problematic because they might serve up the purpose as a bit of a screener, right?
Mm-hmm.
Listen, it can work. It just means that it is easier the fewer people I have to sell to. Do you see what I'm saying?
Makes sense. Yep.
And so I try to, what I push for is a decision maker, someone that can say yay or nay on a hiring decision. Can't always get that at the first go round. And so, you know, if it's an employer I really want to get in, I'll get in wherever I can get in, right?
Yeah.
But I'm going to prepare then for and have an outcome established that is appropriate for that particular. So I can't go in with the HR person, let's say, and say, oh, I want to see them make a hiring decision. Well, no, that's not realistic because they don't make that hiring decision. What I need them to do is I need to convey to them that we're a viable option, that they'll make the recommendation to the hiring manager. And then I need to push for a meeting with that hiring manager because I'm probably the best person to deal with the objections that hiring manager might have to hiring someone with a disability than the HR person does. Not because the HR person isn't smart enough, it's because they might not have the kind of experience, right? So when they start talking about how much is an accommodate, no, we can't, you know, they go to HR and they say, hey, Joey, you know, met this organization, they work with, you know, persons with disabilities. I think it's a great thing. And you go, no, that's going to cost us too much for accommodation. We can't afford that. Like, do they know how to come back on an objection like that? Right? We do, but we got to be able to speak to that person to get to that. You see what I'm saying?
I do.
So,
well, people liked listening to you. We had 0 people drop off, but I want to be
wow.
everybody's time.
Well, thank you. I enjoy talking about this.
You can tell there's a lot of passion there.
Thank you, man.
Well, I hope you stay warm up there in Canada, Toronto.
Thank you.
I know it's crazy out there. At least, you know, we deal with falling iguanas as the but you guys get like 30 feet of snow. So
that's right.
Worth wearing a helmet to go outside or not going outside.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of this and all of the organizations that are on. It's so, you know, it's so encouraging to know that there's organizations out there that really want to make an impact and see more persons with disabilities to work. And hats off to Able Trust. I've known the organization for many years. For you guys, you know, you guys coming to the forefront to really become a resource to help these organizations. So, you know, thank you. I'm honored that you guys would even consider me here as part of this. And so thank you so much.
So I do know Allison put your information in, I believe, the chat box, but I don't know if you want to plug a website right now.
Yeah. So empoakville.com.
Perfect. So
and I have a podcast, a very simple podcast. I got to do some new ones, but it's called Job Placement Tips Podcast. not the Joe Rogan podcast. It's just
Yeah. On iTunes, Spotify, wherever.
Yeah, wherever you get your podcasts. So it's a job placement tips podcast, and
We'll try to send that out when we do the release of this recording. So hopefully you get some hits and some.
Yeah, that's great. And if folks want to, they can reach out to me through the website. And if they have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer any questions. And so thank you for this, Joey.
No, thank you, Bill. Thank everybody who joined us today for taking time out of your day to come listen and learn. Anticipate a post-survey webinar or post-webinar survey going out today or first thing early tomorrow morning. And like Ellison said, that we are rolling out that ABLE network as we work to help support organizations like yours with the capacity building, with making connections to businesses, with supporting Floridians with disabilities to join the workforce and be a thriving part of their local community. So look for more information on that. And again, we're going to start that listening tour, but feel free to reach out to us before we reach out to you and invite us to come into your local neighborhood, your office, and have that pre-session meeting. So hopefully we'll hear from all of you in the near future. Again, thank you for joining us, and this recording will be available soon. So thanks, everybody.